Sills, 8 days. 8 days until the start of training camp for the Eagles and many teams. Actually, on Wednesday, the Jets start. Hope all had a great weekend. I know the weather is kind of crazy all across the country. Hot as hell and hot as Hades in the West, Northeast, the rain in Pennsylvania. Man, crazy. I'm telling you, I still blame the Chinese weather balloon. Okay? I don't care what anybody says. The Chinese weather balloon, in my opinion, you know me, a conspiracy guy. I'm going with that balloon, man, because our weather has been crazy. So I guess 4 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to know a little bit about some of these franchise tags. Josh Jacobs with the Raiders, Tony Pollard with the Cowboys, and obviously Saquon Barkley. And by the way, from what we're hearing, the Giants are not budging off of the contract that they've offered. So this is what I would do. If he doesn't take it, I would offer Saquon Barkley a 1-year, $13.5 million deal. I'd make it north of the franchise tag, sign it, and if you don't, I'll fine your ass. You can do what Le'Veon Bell did, throw $9 million into a trash can and light it on fire and never get that money and be a year older at a position nobody gives a shit about in the NFL. The league has the leverage over you. Backup wide receivers make more money than most of the starting running backs in the National Football League. And by the way, I don't think Barkley's handled this poorly. He just plays a position that's getting its face kicked in right now. You know, quite frankly, I'll tell you something. 2 of the most important positions in an offensive huddle have to be the tight end and running back, and they're underpaid. Think about it. Most of the NFL tight ends that are in the game today, when you look at a guy like Travis and you see Travis Kelce, he's not a traditional tight end that blocks when it comes to the run game. He's more used like a wide receiver, but they don't pay him like that. So actually, that position is underpaid. The running back, you got to run the ball. Hey, what was one of the major reasons that the Eagles had troubles last year when it came to closing teams out? What was it? They didn't have an effective running back, okay, that was going to be able to just have a red zone offense to run the clock out. Even though they had a 1,300-yard back, they struggled in closing games out because they would get away from running the ball. The running back position is essential to controlling the clock. Both those positions. Tone, you're right. The Giants don't just have leverage. The league has leverage. Completely right. Everyone running back thinks they're special until the league shows them they're. That's right. The market value. Dude, I'm telling you, you want to hear something? Do you know who got one of the best market value deals in the offseason? Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, of all the players that signed, probably got the best offseason deal of any player in the league. For where the position is right now, $7 million per year, $21 million 3 years. Dude, he got the best contract of anybody in the league at their respective position. He's one of the higher paid guys in the sport now. Think about that. He's one of the highest paid guys in the league. Dude, the NFL is telling you. And Barkley wants to get $14, $15 million. I would never pay that. For a guy who's been constantly hurt, I'd give you a 1-year deal. And then as the trading deadline came, if the Giants weren't doing anything, I would move you to a contender because guess what? I like you. But I would move you to the AFC. Like Buffalo. Okay? That's what the Giants should do. And if he doesn't show up to training camp, fine his ass. Fine him. You can't not sign this deal. You understand? You lose the money and get fined for missing training camp. And I think it's $18,000 a day. Fine him. Hey, if he doesn't want to sign a $13 million 1-year deal, you guys couldn't come to an agreement. And that just tells you that they're going to move on from Barkley. They should move on from Barkley. Dude, that football team needs better corners, better O-line, and a top-flight wideout before they need to pay a running back $14, $15 million. So get this. So the Giants want to be they want to be a little bit better of a version of Tennessee. Is that what you're saying? They want to be a little bit better than what Tennessee is with Derrick Henry. You're not going anywhere. Ringo signed and working with Buddha. Could be a safety. Probably already told him they're going to work him at both positions, 85. I'm not signing Barkley to a contract extension. That just shows you too, man. You hear the people in New York going, the Giants need him. The Giants don't need to pay that much money for a running back who, quite frankly, won't make the season. Dude, he's been hurt every year he's played. Why would you invest that? Here, and I'm going to show you how organizations absolutely trip over themselves. I was just telling Tone this. So let me get this right. DeAndre Hopkins signs with Tennessee for $13-14 million. $6 million less than what A.J. Brown wanted a year ago when he was 24. So they signed a 31-year-old guy who's coming off of an injury for basically $6 million that AJ wanted and got him for the same price. But he's 31, coming off of an injury. Why would you do that? Look, Hopkins took the money. He's not winning shit in Tennessee. They're good. They may win the division. Highly unlikely. The Jags are superior to them. But highly unlikely. And in an AFC, you want to hear something? Tennessee can win 9 games and still be 2 games out of the playoff race. Okay. And by the way, I don't begrudge the guy. He took the money. Okay, he's 31. He's looking at his mortality now. He wants to get as much money as he possibly can. Not a problem. But you're not winning in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill and whoever they have behind him. What, the kid from Kentucky, I think, is up there now? Or whomever they've had roll in and out of there over the last 5 years. Doesn't really matter. They're not going anywhere until they move off the formula of Derrick Henry. And they can't move off the formula of Derrick Henry. Why? Because they don't have a quarterback that can deliver the goods on Sunday the same way the running back can deliver the goods and at least make them competitive. Henry makes the Tennessee Titans competitive. Ryan Tannehill does not. And that's exactly what Barkley will do. Daniel Jones doesn't make you a championship contender. That team is not a championship contender. Get this. The New York Giants are not a championship contender team, but you're spending almost $50 million on the quarterback, $14 million on the running back, and you're spending $17 on an injured tight end. That is not a championship formula. That's not how you win. You got the majority of your salary cap tied up in 3 guys. You're top heavy in your cap. You know, again, the secret sauce in New England was always this: Brady and a balanced salary cap. The salary cap was always balanced. Everyone took pay cuts and haircuts, including Brady. Brady was never the highest paid player in the history of his career in New England. He didn't start making the giant money till he got to Tampa. Man, you just watch organizations just fart all over themselves. It's absolutely insane. Hey, before we get in, we're going to look at position rooms. This time we're talking coaches for the Philadelphia Eagles and your Week 13 opponent, the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to look at the Niners, but before we do that, I want to hit upon this Embiid thing. And Embiid now wants out. Oh, yeah, by the way, he had a lame-ass effort in cleaning it up. But because he thought he was going to be a big hero with Maverick Carter and sitting out there with all the stupid asses in Los Angeles, he thought he'd play big wheel out there and say that, hey, if I'm not going to win a championship, hey, you know what? If it's not in Philly, it's somewhere else. And he thought he was going to be a big wheel, but now guess what? He's held accountable to it because people in Philadelphia hold you accountable. Nobody else in other stupid-ass cities holds you accountable to that shit. So you got James Harden and you got Embiid saying that they want out. Or at least now he's laying out the yellow brick road for him to get out of here. I'm talking Joel Embiid. I hear some people go like this. You know, I don't blame him. I do. You're the face of the franchise. Is he wrong? No. But why would you do that publicly after you just had a shit showing in Game 7 against the Celtics? The organization has just come off of Ben Simmons, who you bitched about how that whole thing went down over Jimmy Butler. You just blamed all your teammates about how you guys didn't get enough from everyone else. And now all of a sudden, you're sitting here telling, hey, if it's not here, it's somewhere else. It's inappropriate. That's what it is. Even if he's right, he doesn't have the right timing for it. It's timing. Because you know what you do? You validate everything people say about the Sixer process. It sucks. You validate the other side of the aisle when they say they'll never win here. And you validate it. Nick Nurse. Seriously. Nick Nurse. Why did you fire Doc Rivers again? I missed it. It's not the coaches. It's management. And the stupid-ass players they invest in. Man. Get this. As great as Harden and as great as Embiid are, you don't invest in them because they're not championship metal. Okay? They're not championship metal. You don't invest in people like that. Oh, I see. I'm going to take my bat and ball. Hey, by the way, he's not wrong. But now, you just changed your coach. You got a guy Harden who wants out. You just went through the Simmons deal. And now you add on to the fire by throwing more gasoline on it. And you call yourself a leader. And after you won the MVP, you took the rest of the playoffs off. Again, here I am talking about the dumbass Sixers. And the dumbass Sixers validate everything I say about them. It's a loser organization. Don't you wear the black Sixer hat all the time, like you're going to a funeral. Because every time you go to Wells Fargo, you might as well be going to a wake. It's a wake. They have no way in the world of putting a championship mentality together for the Sixers. Give me the Colangelos of the past. At least they got to a finals. Hey, Seal said, how we potentially make the same mistake by paying Hurts because of him having injuries, or is it because the contract is team-friendly? I think it's team-friendly. Ace, it's team-friendly. And there's a lot of ways that the Eagles can get out of that deal if it's not working. Okay? We'll talk more about that here in a minute, okay? So again, listen, the money's high for me, and you paid him too soon. You paid him for 1 year, and his improvement level from year one as a starter to this is all you've paid Jalen Hurts on what you've seen. Year two, he had a sensational year. And that's exactly what I just said. He had a sensational year. He's not had a sensational career. He's not had a sensational couple of years. He's not had a sensational anything but 1 year. Okay? That's it. That's all you're paying for. But you're also paying for this. You're being around the guy every day, and you see what the guy brings to the organization. There is a value to that. Okay? There's a value to that. And to me, personally, I'll tell you the most important thing that I think they're paying Jalen Hurts on. His improvement. And Tone, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but everybody that played in that huddle had a career year playing with Hurts. I mean, there were guys in that huddle that had better years than he did. The two wide receivers, the running back, the tight ends, the offensive line. Jalen didn't have that spectacular of a statistical year when you compare it to the rest of the NFL quarterbacks. Okay? He just didn't. They're pedestrian. 22 touchdowns, 3,700 yards. But when you look at the rest of the huddle, everyone had career years. That speaks volume to him. Okay? Dosett, you can say whatever you want. I'm not ripping him. The objective of a quarterback is to make everybody else around him better. And he did. How many? And you won. You know how rare it is to make everybody in your huddle better and win? We see empty calorie stats in Dallas every year. There were no empty calorie stats in the Philadelphia offense and in that huddle, especially with Jalen Hurts. It's not a rip. It's not a rip. Okay, there was something else that was thrown out there. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN threw this out, and I thought about it. Before we get to the topics here, by the way, Gary Cobb, 4:30 from Fox 29 in Philadelphia, our Monday guest each and every single day. We so appreciate him doing that for us. So Jeremy Fowler was talking to executives in the National Football League, and he was polling the best offensive tackles in the game. One executive who was anonymous, and I hate this, said that Lane Johnson's the most overrated player in the National Football League. And he goes, he plays in an RPO system. It's not really a traditional passing system for you to be able to gauge playing offensive tackle. And he gets the benefit of hiding behind an RPO system. It's not my words. I'm paraphrasing what this executive told Jeremy Fowler. Okay? And I'm going to tell you what I think of it. He said that Lane Johnson's the most overhyped and overrated player in the league. And so much so that Lane even commented, and so did Malata. Okay? The only thing, and there is something to the fact that he plays in a run-dominant offense, but again, got to understand something. You see, here's what makes him great. He's a right tackle that's the best run-blocking lineman in the league, but also one of the top 3 pass-rushing tackles. But he plays right tackle. I'm not looking at it glass half full negative. I'm looking at it positive. Most of your right tackles aren't good pass blockers. They're not good in pass probe. He's exceptional. He's exceptional in it. So when he says that, Lane has turned himself into one of the top 3 pass probe tackles linemen in the National Football League. The best is Trent Williams because he plays the premium left tackle position. And most of your top tackles are the left tackle. Okay? So you're not looking at Lane in exactly what the Eagles do. He fits exactly what they're asking him to do. The RPO run, it's not pass run option. He is dominating because he and Jalen Hurts are taking advantage of the system that they've implemented now. He is so much better than he was 2-3 years ago because of the new offense that they're running. It fits him. It actually fits Jason Kelce too. So this executive is still looking at, well, Jalen Hurts is not a 7-step drop quarterback and Lane plays right tackle. That's fundamentally flawed if you're not watching how the Eagles have revamped this offense into being a run-pass option team. Lane Johnson is the most important lineman on the team because run-pass option. It's true what the guy says. They don't perform in a traditional 7-step drop offense, Lane gets the benefit of that. But that's not what they're doing in Philly. Do you understand? I said this before to Tone, that what Jalen Hurts is doing and what Lane Johnson is doing, they've created a one-of type offense that very rarely do you see, where you've got a guy who's running an offense and it's a one-of. This is why they're trying to do this now in Chicago, and this is why they're trying to do this now in Baltimore. Baltimore wants to change to exactly what the Eagles are doing, and they were proficient enough. There was an MVP year up there. He led the NFL in touchdown passes. I'm talking Lamar Jackson. What exactly was wrong with the offense? They weren't winning enough critical big games. That's why. That's right. Ace. So you got a guy, Ace, that won't put his name to it. Ace, think about that. You got a guy that won't put his name to it? It's really probably nothing then, except a guy just talking shit, and he's probably with the Cowboys. Absolutely. Or somebody who thinks, maybe it's a Niner guy, I don't know, who somebody thinks that they have the best tackle when, quite frankly, Lane Johnson has made himself one of the best pass pro tackles in the game. Okay? Totally. So I thought that was off base. Because, hey, is Lane, could you put Lane in the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line with Joe Burrow? I would want him at left tackle protecting my quarterback's blind side, because my quarterback doesn't run. I need my quarterback's blind side protected. They're not going to run the ball a shitload of times. So you don't really need Lane. I need Lane to pass protect. He is in a system that fits him. So what? You know what that's called? Coaching. An organization figuring out their personnel. I think that's off base. That's off base. He's not overrated. He's not overhyped. I think he's a great football player. Okay. Let's move on. Before we get to the Eagles coaches, let's take a look at the 49ers. Week 13. Give me your all assessment of what you think of San Francisco before I get into how I see Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's group. How do you look at the 2023 San Francisco 49ers? How do you look at the 49ers? Fourth best in the NFC. No QB. 49ers overrated. Andres, 49ers all hype, no headless horseman, sleeping, terrifying giant. Three-headed monster at quarterback. Of course, Niner. Would not expect anything other than that from you. Kirk Cousins might be a Niner next year. What I honestly think is that Scamahan is an overrated joke. Debo's a fat bitch, and their secondary sucks. That's a great take. Okay? That's a great take. All right, let me get into them now. 2023 San Francisco 49ers. And by the way, week 13 is at the link. One of the favorites to get to the Super Bowl. Absolutely great year last year at 13-4 with a horrible ending. And the NFC title game has left a bad taste in everyone in the organization, not just the players. This goes into the front office and has to be in ownership. You put all the pieces together except the one. You basically played a chess game without a king. You thought you'd go in and you would play chess without a king. And you can't. So all the moves that they've made, including some of the poor draft choices, this football team has definitely underachieved under Kyle Shanahan. Purdy or Lance, they think one of these guys is the future. I wonder if John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan think that way, especially when a year ago, reports are that as the season was going on, they made a call to Ben Roethlisberger to see if he wanted to play quarterback in San Francisco. There's not a chance that they're sold completely on Brock Purdy. They're clearly not sold on Trey Lance. The conversation, the players' comments, the way the coach talks about him, they're basically looking at Trey Lance, and in my opinion, Trey Lance is an afterthought. And you're in a position where you've got to take advantage of this roster now. The 49ers are not in a position to develop a quarterback. You're a Super Bowl contending football team, and you don't have a quarterback. How have you not addressed this? And you see the stubbornness of the front office with Trey Lance. And get this, here's where they are with their quarterback position. They're hoping Purdy's the guy, and maybe they find magic with Trey Lance. That's not a plan. And then, for a security blanket, they sign Sam Darnold. Of all the things that they have done right in San Francisco, you can't be any more wrong about how you've held your quarterback position. It has stopped you from winning Super Bowls. It has. How about this? Let me say this to you. This roster here is better than the roster that Jim Harbaugh had when he took the team to the Super Bowl. And I'm looking at this. This roster is as good, if not better, than the Eagles. Their offense has spectacular players on that side of the ball as well. Getting Christian McCaffrey a year ago, fantastic. Okay, now they're going to get draft choices in next year, so it won't be a complete disaster if this thing falls on its face. But again, Kyle Shanahan has to do one thing that Tone has said, Huss, you keep putting your name on the test and you're not passing the bar exam. You can't call yourself a lawyer until you pass it. Just because you've taken it 5 times doesn't mean you've passed it. And you don't get credit for putting your name on it. Well, they went 13-4, Sills. Hey, guess what? So did the Vikings. So did the Vikings. So what? It's got to result in something. Kyle Shanahan, I think, has to win this year. If not now, when? Dude, Sean McVay has been to 2 Super Bowls, owns 2 NFC titles, and a Super Bowl ring, and he's not 38. You keep telling me the guy in San Francisco is the greatest play caller in the sport. Shit. Okay. What is it resulting in? Not figuring out the quarterback position. Let me say this to you too, man. One more thing here. This guy's turning into John Gruden. Like he can't coach quarterbacks. And some would go, Sills, look how many quarterbacks he used last year to get to the NFC title game. Okay. Getting to the NFC title game? That can't be the end result. It can't be the end result. Okay? Look at these weapons. Look at the weapons they have. Trey Lance is not a weapon. These are weapons. Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, Kittle, a really good O-line. What are you doing with them? And on defense, Bosa, Hargrave, Warner, the safety. Where are you going? Where are you going? I mean, they lose the D coordinator. They bring in Steve Wilkes. They add Hargrave. Here's the problem, too. I would say one thing that's an issue with San Francisco's roster. They're not a deep unit, especially on the defensive side of the football. San Francisco's got a lot of frontline guys, but they can't afford injuries at key spots like corner, linebacker, rush, edge, and I don't think in the O-line. You can't have injuries in those places because you're not very deep at those places. Now, at the end of the day, if they get performances from Javon Hargrave, from Armstead, from Bosa, Warner, Samuel, and obviously Christian McCaffrey, they're going to be right there. They're going to be right there. But again, dude, here we are. We're 8 days out from training camp. The Jets show up Wednesday, and we're talking about does San Francisco have a quarterback? How crazy is that? A team that's being considered a Super Bowl contending team, and we're sitting here on July 17th. Well, I don't know who's playing quarterback. That's not a remedy to try to sit here and tell me, well, hey, guess what? The Niners are a contender. You're not a contender until we see what happens at quarterback. So when 49er fans are going like this, I can't wait till week 13 against the Eagles. Okay, really? You can't even figure out who your quarterback is. Before you think about week 13 and the Philadelphia Eagles, you better worry about your quarterback position first. You better have a quarterback position. Here, I'll say this to you. Niner, this is for you. You don't have that quarterback position figured out by week 13, the Eagles will blow you out. You put Sam Darnold on the football field at Lincoln Financial against that Eagle team, they'll blow you out. It won't be close. It won't be close. You get blown out. You'll get blown out. Like you did a year ago. Blown out. Then you could sit there in the offseason again crying about how you don't have the quarterback position figured out. And then you could turn around and start blaming John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Because if they don't get this right, asses are going to roll. You gave up 3 ones for Trey Lance. And if Purdy doesn't come out, everyone's getting fired. I'd fire everyone, from the general manager to the head coach. It's not working. You thought you would invest. Hey, it's not that you miss on Lance. You missed 4 times basically on Lance. Do you understand that? Actually, 3 times. You failed 3. You basically, if you think about it, right, Tone? If you really want to go there, I'm going to make a point to you here. If you fail this year, you would have basically given up 3 first-round quarterbacks for a guy who failed. Now, I don't know about you. You just don't let that roll by and sit there and go like, hey, guess what? We're all good. And you keep stumbling at the line. Niner goes, Sills, you've been living under a rock. Purdy has been named the starter weeks ago. Purdy's been named the starter weeks ago, and he just started throwing a week ago. Sounds like you got it figured out. That tells you all you need to know. I just enjoyed Niner, what he just said. Think about it. This guy was in Jacksonville a week ago, started throwing. The 2 quarterbacks that they have in camp, they named the guy who's still hurt and said that they'll be ready for the opening of the week. So the toilet quarterbacks that they have now aren't good enough to start week 1. So they're going to start Purdy. without even practicing, OTAs, even going through training camp. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That's really all you need to know. Thank you, Niner. He was named starter weeks ago. He just absolutely validated my point. Okay? Thank you, Niner. Hey, Sills, Purdy was named starter weeks ago. Oh, well, he wasn't even thrown until last week. So you must have a lot of horse shit in San Francisco at the quarterback position now, in Sam Darnold and in Trey Lance. Thank you, Niner. Contributions always needed, man. Thank you for slamming home the point and arm wrestling the point home. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you very much. Look at Niner. Even a San Francisco 49er fan. Look at that. Validating Sills' point on their horseshit situation. Okay? That's your opinion, Sills. What do you mean opinion? You just told me he was named a starter weeks ago. He hasn't even gone through OTAs, and he's not going to go through training camp. And he's been named a starter. And he's going to walk into week 1 against Pittsburgh. Thank you, Niner. It's not an opinion. You told it to me. Come on, Niner. That's not an opinion. That's not an opinion. You just said it to me. You said our quarterback. Hey, I said the quarterbacks that you have right now that are healthy in camp are toilet. They're trash. They're shit. Because if you're naming a guy who's injured and still on the IR and is not going to go through training camp, you don't have anybody that can hold the fort down against Pittsburgh? Congratulations to you. Thank you, Niner. I didn't say that. You did. Woo! My God. Woo! Oh, man. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Imagine that tone. Congratulations. You played yourself, Niner guy. That's right, man. Niner guy, man. Right into the Sil Web. Reeled it in. That's a big one out there near Ocean City, man. You got to get near like the boardwalk out there, you know. You know where I'm at, Tone, right? Near the boardwalk in Ocean City. Got to throw it off there. Okay. Hey, you might want to call Carson Wentz. Niners like, oh, no. All right. Let's get into the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff here. Before I did this, I went back and I did some history on all the coaches. Now, I didn't go knee deep in all the coaches. Okay? I didn't go knee deep into all the coaches. But what I did was I looked at Sirianni, Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, Michael Clay, Jeff Stoutland, Matt Patricia. Okay? And here is the coaching staff, and here is the position room of coaches that the Eagles have. And I'm going to start it with your head coach, Nick Sirianni. Entering his 3rd year. 23-11. Most wins by a coach in his first 2 seasons in franchise history. Best record ever. His strengths, knows both sides of the room, front office and players. Okay? He knows both sides of the room. He knows how to play both sides of the room. And again, I don't think it's strategically done. I think this is an innate thing that Nick has. And that is the fact that, okay, to be a good head football coach, you've got to kind of be like the Pied Piper for what the front office wants. And what you're doing is you're playing both sides. Front office wants to have this style of defense. I'm going to work with this style of defense. And get this, it's working. That's why everybody's on the same page. We're going to work this style of offense. That's why you're not going to see very much change on both sides of the football, because this is an organizational decision. This isn't a Nick Sirianni decision. This is not Nick Sirianni's offense. If you remember right, his offense was taken away from him at 2-5. The offense that Nick wanted to run in Philadelphia was taken from him. When he was play calling and the type of offense he wanted, it was failing. So the front office and Nick came up and said, we're not getting anywhere with this. He's not a drop back guy. What do you want to do? Then they implemented Shane Steichen. Then they put the RPO in. And once they put the RPO in, they completely played to the strengths of Lane, Jalen, the O-line, the running game, everything on that offense just clicked. And basically what they did was they figured it out. Okay? And Nick is part of that process. Okay? Hey, Seals, you want to know what 40 whiners common denominator with delusional and butthurt dumb organizations? With Dallas, no rings. Absolutely. They get in the way of themselves. This is another example of the Eagles not getting in the way of each other. And Nick knows that. Do you know how hard it is for an NFL coach like a Doug Peterson or Andy Reid not to have their own imprint or thumbprint on a organization? Do you know what Nick Sirianni's thumbprint is on this organization? Is that he understands both sides of the room. I mean, take a look at this. Look at Dallas, for instance. Mike McCarthy, for the first time in Dallas, is going to have say in his team. How long has he been there? He's finally going to have say in his team because he's going to be a play caller. Prior to that, he was like a librarian. Okay? He was like a librarian. And remember something, the more equity Nick gets with winning and going along with what they're doing, the more they're going to listen to him. Dude, when Nick Sirianni was 2-5, how much equity do you think he had in the room? Zero. You don't listen to a coach who's 2-5 and offense is sputtering, going nowhere. But when you start winning because you know what you do, I got to be a better head coach. I got to oversee more as a delegator. Sirianni's gone from being a play. I'll tell you this. I don't think people understand this. I had this told to me from numerous coaches. The transition that college coaches or college quarterbacks have to make from that level to the NFL, we see it all the time. Some guys struggle, some guys don't, right? Well, what do you think that struggle is from being a coordinator to being a head coach? You still think you're a head coach, and you can't put down the OC or DC headsets. Happened to Patricia in Detroit. We see it all the time with guys you thought would make good coaches, but when they took off their side of the ball and had to put on where you click the switch and you get OCDC, and you had to listen to both sides, they're not very good at that. Parcells said it numerous times. Hey, I was lucky I survived my first year in New York, because if I didn't survive, remember he told Phil Simms, and Simms said it here on this program. He went to Simms and says, if I survive this, we're going to win a lot of games here. Because Bill knew exactly what he had to do. I think Belichick had that same shit happen to him in Cleveland. I think Shanahan had that happen to him when he was with the Raiders. That transition's hard, man. Nick did it on the fly. You know what, too? I got to hand it to the organization. They probably told him, hey, Nick, let's let Shane. He's had more success and more working with when it came to RPO. We got Jalen Hurts. They still didn't believe it, even after the first year that Hurts was the guy. But they liked what they were running. And they went on to win. It got to the playoffs, got destroyed in the playoff game, but they saw something in Hurts. They still went and got 2 wins because they were still thinking in April they might have to get a quarterback. Well, Hurts turns in a great year. And then all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, this thing fit the personnel and our team. That is on the side of Nick Sirianni going with it. And get this, how many times do you not agree that Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman were butting heads at the end over decision-making of the roster, the direction of the team, the quarterback, the assistant coaches? It was constantly butting heads every week. Nick is not doing that. Now, you're winning. You're winning. That's part of it. Okay? That's part of it. And that's why Nick is improving as a delegator. You know, he's more Jimmy Johnson than he is Doug Peterson. I'm talking Nick Sirianni. Because Jimmy's the greatest delegator of all time. He delegates to his assistant coaches, and his assistant coaches have a lot of say in the direction of their units. North Turner ran the offense in Dallas. Dave Wannstedt or Butch Davis led those championship football teams defensively. Wasn't Jimmy, but he oversaw it. Because then what he did was, now Jimmy had the advantage. He hired all the coaches and picked all the personnel. Nick has none of that. But it's a pseudo version of it. Yeah, see, Jimmy had total say. In 5 years, won 3 Super Bowls. I mean, not much to say on that. So Sirianni's really doing well. But here's the problem with coaching. One bad year, you could be off your ass and you could be out the door. It doesn't matter. You fire a coach quicker today if he's not the right guy. Look at what they did in Arizona. They gave both Steve Keim and they gave Cliff Kingsbury contract extensions, 3-year extensions. Then the year came up, they fired them both with years still remaining on their deal. Okay? In my opinion, once again, Nick Sirianni will be evaluated every year and is tied to success of what Jalen Hurts does. He's tied to that kid's success. Brian Johnson. I went deep into this guy here, and I'm very, very... How about this? I am more encouraged on what I found out about Brian Johnson than what I was before when I said he's the least experienced offensive coordinator in the NFL. I went knee deep into him. Okay. You notice the Eagles have yet to offer Sirianni an extension. They are still evaluating him. Absolutely. Dude, if you can fire Andy Reid and Doug Peterson, you can fire Nick Sirianni any moment. And Nick knows that. Nick, personally to me, I think they'll extend Nick at the end of the year if they have a great year. If they don't, they won't. Okay? I look at Brian Johnson. He's been in the Eagle organization now for 3 years. He was the quarterback coach 2021 to 22. And here's where the relationship is to the organization and why I think there's more positive here now with Brian Johnson taking over at OC than what thought in the past by me. He was a former Gator offensive coordinator in 2018 and 2020 under Dan Mullen. Why is that important? Because he's with Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. And the year that Dak Prescott led Mississippi State to a number 1 ranking and 4,300 passing yards was 2014. He was the OC there for Prescott. So Dan Mullen is a hell of an offensive-minded guy. And you're talking about a guy, and if you've ever heard Dan Mullen talk about a player like Dak Prescott, and let me tie it into Jalen here. I'm going to tie this into Jalen. Tone, I think you'll like this. In high school, Dak Prescott was getting no scholarship offers. Okay? No scholarship offers. 0. And somebody on the coaching staff said, you need to invite this guy to your quarterback camp and to your football camp, Dak Prescott. They saw him. He wasn't great. He was athletic, but he wasn't great. Well, Brian Johnson saw this. And they were like, you gotta offer him. So he shows up at Mississippi State his freshman year. He's not that hot. Sophomore year, he gets better. Dan Mullen notices it. He gets better. Then by the time the junior year comes around, they couldn't believe the improvement. Could not believe the improvement that he had. And by the time Brian Johnson got to him, his senior year, Dan Mullen couldn't believe how much had he increased and improved as a starting quarterback. Could not believe the improvement from high school to that camp to his final year at Mississippi State. Could not believe it. The improvement. Brian Johnson was part of that and the development of Dak. And one of the reasons the Cowboys drafted him was because Prescott had kept getting better and better and better. Well, the last 3 years, Brian Johnson's been on the coaching staff in Philadelphia, and you're seeing that same kind of Prescott improvement. So Brian Johnson has to be credited with the improvement of Jalen Hurts. He helped develop Dak Prescott. Prescott was not considered any prospect in the Southeastern Conference. He was considered no prospect. But as Brian Johnson got to him and then became the OC, I think it was in 14, his best year there, he was the offensive coordinator under Dan Mullen there. Won a shitload of games, threw for almost 4,500 yards, was great. I mean, so the guy's developed a quarterback. And he's developed players that people thought weren't going to get better. Whatever you think of Dak Prescott, Brian Johnson had a hand in his development, along with Dan Mullen. And now he's taken what he helped develop Dak with Jalen. And it's working. Here's my point. Is that when you see a guy continuing to help people get better and better, no matter if it's Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, you have to start looking at maybe Brian Johnson's a quarterback whisperer kind of guy. Prescott he demanded that Dan Mullen give him a scholarship. No one wanted to on the staff. So the more you dive into Brian Johnson, I hate the fact he's a Gator, but it makes sense because he was with Mullen. The guy's good. He's got a background of developing quarterbacks. He's just been never given the OC job at the NFL level until now. He was a offensive coordinator at Florida and Mississippi State. Southeastern Conference, okay, maybe not the NFL, but it's better than the Big Ten. Better than the Big Ten. So if you're a Philadelphia Eagle guy, you're not that upset that Shane Steichen's out of the building. And here's another opportunity for a guy potentially to really show that maybe it's an upgrade. Who's Shane Steichen? Who does Shane Steichen? Does he get credit for that? For developing Jalen, or is it Brian? Brian on his resume's got Dak. Hey, not as bad as I thought. Not as bad as I thought. Actually, better than I thought. Ronald, we'll see. Absolutely. 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 Hey, JM, you're right. He was also at Utah, and he was the offensive coordinator at Utah. A pass-happy offense that threw the ball around a lot. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sean Desai I'll tell you something. Again, a guy, you look into his numbers and you look into his past. He wasn't the DC in Seattle. However, Pete Carroll leaned on him a lot in Seattle. And the word up there is that they really liked him. And they wanted him on the coaching staff and thought a lot of him. And he brought a lot to the table, especially when they didn't have really a lot of great personnel up there. So you get the endorsement, basically, of Pete Carroll, who's a defensive-minded guy. That's a good thing. Then from 2013 to 21, he was in Chicago. He was the DC in 2021, okay? He's been a coordinator. They were 4th in sacks and 6th in total defense. I believe that's the year that Robert Quinn had 18.5 sacks, and they were getting to the quarterback, and they had a really great year. I think that was maybe Matt Nagy's last year up there in Chicago. But they were 6th in total defense. So he's got a resume of leading a defense and into a top 10 defense. So here's where I'm going here. Both coordinators are not as inexperienced, okay, or not as inexperienced as I thought, especially with the history, and especially with Brian Johnson. I'm absolutely impressed with Brian Johnson's background. He developed Dak. Dude, Dak Prescott, if you ever hear Dan Mullen talking about Dak Prescott, will tell you, he was a nothing burger guy, practice squad guy, when he got to Mississippi State. He was like a practice squad guy. And he helped develop him into being a $50 million a year player. He's part of that. Okay? Ronald goes, I think the Eagles have been good at this, cranking out coaches who get plucked. You have to look at Howie. Lurie coaching players. Ronald, absolutely. Absolutely. All through Jeffrey Lurie's history of owning the team, he's been a fabulous owner in putting a front office together that picks the right personnel in the personnel department and also in the coaching level. They've done a rock solid job here, man. And again, this is what you say when you look at these two coordinators, Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. They deserve their opportunity here. They're young. They're innovative. They're going to use the numbers. They're going to use, sabermetrics. They're going to go down that line. But they're also going to go with what the organization is known for, believing in their players and coaches and position coaches. So better than I thought. Not the least experienced guys who deserve a shot at being coordinators in the NFL. I'm there with you. I'm totally there with you on this. And I think they do deserve a shot. Michael Clay, special teams, 3rd year. Outside of Jake Elliott, I don't see it. I don't get it. And I don't understand it. They've done nothing to improve that side of the ball. Now, maybe the Eagles look at it this way. It's not his fault. He's a good coordinator. We're just not putting good players there. But I don't see it. They're not good on kickoff coverages. They're not good at punt coverages. Like I said, if you don't have Jake Elliott, it's one of the worst units in the league. I mean, your kickoff team is suspect at best. Not very good tacklers. And then you look at your punt coverage and your punt return, it goes nowhere. I mean, why not help your team out a little more? Can you get this? So if Michael Clay and his special teams gave Jalen Hurts 10 more yards on a punt return or a kickoff return, Jesus, do you know how much advantage that would be starting on the 34-yard line instead of starting constantly on your 20? And especially when you have to go 14-play drives. I mean, make it a little easier. It's just not a very good unit. And again, I don't know if it's him or if it's just the personnel that they don't have on that unit. They just do not have very good football players there. They have kind of like, can I tell you what I think the Eagles special teams looks like? It really does look like a practice squad team. It's just a bunch of practice squad guys. Okay? That's how bad it is. You can't even point out who the problem. No, right. I don't know if it's Clay. And it's probably why he's kept his job. Because for a guy to have his job for 3 years like Michael Clay, the organization must not be helping him, and they must be telling him that. Because nobody keeps their job with a shit job like that. Unless you're just getting poor personnel. They don't tackle well. They don't cover well. They don't return well. The only thing you do is field goals and extra point. It's the only thing keeping that thing on a respirator. Other than that, you got a horrible unit. And it'll cost you in a game somewhere this season because your unit is so terrible. Okay? It's just not a very good unit. Jeff Stoutland, the best position coach in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, and that includes Jim Johnson. A defensive coordinator versus an offensive line coach, it's not close in importance. Barkley and Jacobs are not signing the franchise tag. Should the Eagles look into Jacobs? No. Okay, why would I want to sign a guy for $14 million when I could sign Dalvin Cook for $5 million if that was the case? We'll look at that here in a minute. Jeff Stoutland is the best position coach in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. There's no getting around it. It's the most important position coach you can have. It's the most important position you can have on your team. There's not a question, in my opinion, that he's your best. Finally here, before we close it up here, Tone, I wanted to get it done here. Matt Patricia, senior defensive assistant. And from what I'm understanding here, that's his title. Senior defensive assistant. Now, it doesn't say to who. Are you working for Desai or are you working for Nick? Who do you answer to? Do you answer to Desai? I don't know. I don't know. Neither do you. Who does he answer to? Like, does Nick Sirianni and Howie talk to him about what he's seeing? I mean, right? 5-star goes, Jim Johnson was a GOAT without a ring. Stoutland's got a ring. And 2 NFC championship rings in Philly. You tell me who's had more success developing players. Jordan Mailata, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Isaac Seumalo. He actually won Super Bowls and was an integral part of the Super Bowl run, being the run coordinator. Here's Matt Patricia's resume. Stoutland gets you paid. He sure does. Here's Matt Patricia, 2012 to 17. Listen to this. From 2012 to 2017, 2 Super Bowl championships, 3 AFC titles, 6 AFC East division titles as the defensive coordinator of the Patriots. I want to read that one more time. From 2012 to 2017, 2 Super Bowl champions, 3 AFC titles, 6 AFC East championship rings. That's who Matt Patricia is as a D coordinator. Darius Slay versus that? I don't give a shit what Darius Slay thinks. What has he done compared to that? Who are you? He also developed, Patricia, the defensive player of the year. He's also developed defenses that finished in the top 3 that actually won Super Bowls. Darius Slay, great kid. You're here 1 year. I don't really care. It's a pretty good coaching staff. Okay? How about this? It's an inexperienced coaching staff, but it's also a coaching staff that deserves an opportunity. I want to talk about Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and also Tony Pollard. They were supposed to have signed their franchise tags, and I'm sure they're still working with the Barkley. We'll give you an update on that. Keep it here. Hour number 2, National